This is a sample chapter from Fitton Books. Once in a Lifetime. Chapter 3. In the early morning hours, Charlie drove his 62 along a narrow, muddy road toward Roosevelt Field on Long Island. The sun hid back the mist, and he questioned whether they would even fly this morning. He checked his watch. The old man had no problem with his taking the day off, but Francine had put a constraint on his free time, insisting that he meet her and the old man at the tower for lunch. The bumpy, monotonous ride resulted in spraying his shiny car with a muddy residue. A cigarette hung from his mouth as he slowed the 62 and approached a line of cars, uniformed police, and groups of people scattered over the field. The stuffy car exhaust mixed with the fresh, moistened grass and dirt. He leaned out the window toward the motorcycle cop. "Hey, bud, where do I park?" The cop pointed across the grass. "Looks kind of crummy to be flying. 25 grand to whoever makes it. I'll fly out for 25 grand. Lindbergh out there yet? I like him." "They've already started rolling out his plane." He panned the field from his driver's window. "Too muddy. At least it ain't raining." Charlie nodded and maneuvered the car across the grass. He gazed to his left and wondered why Lindbergh or any one of these guys would want to fly out on such a lousy day. It might be clearer out over the ocean, but incredibly risky over such a long distance. He parked the car on the grass and traipsed across the spongy field. In the commotion ahead as he circled, Jamelle walked through the crowd. His stomach tingled as he mired in the mud. Dressed in a pale gray flight suit, she carried the same brown leather case strapped to her shoulder and had a set of field glasses around her neck. Charlie stumbled across the grass, slipping several times as he called out her name. Startled, she spun around with a fearful look over her freckled face, but she smiled when she saw him sliding on the grass. He breathed rapidly as he reached her. Jamelle, I knew I'd see you again." "You did?" "I kept kicking myself for not getting your number or your address." "Kicking yourself? Oh, I see. You're upset with yourself." Her sleek body, even more defined in the flight suit, possessed the same graceful movement, and the jasmine intoxicated his senses. She would not get away this time. "Are you involved in this thing? Prize across the Atlantic? I mean, you're wearing a flight suit." "Oh, no. I'm here, Charlie, merely as an observer of history." "History? You really think this guy's going to do it?" She touched his arm as she spoke. "Not just some guy. Charles Augustus Lindbergh. This is May 20th, 1927. We're standing at Roosevelt Field, right on the edge of history, Charlie. No one has ever crossed this ocean by air. 6 people have died trying. The amazing thing about this flight was that he loaded so much fuel into the plane. By all rights, he shouldn't have been able to take off." She leaned closer and whispered, "However, they constructed the struts and braces with aluminum or balsa. Very streamlined craft." Charlie perched on his toes, trying to view the action. "Sounds like you have it all figured out, like it already happened." "Maybe it has." She handed the glasses to him. The image of a small silver plane, blocks still wedged under the tires, came into view. He had trouble seeing the writing on the side. "Take me to St. Louis?" "No, the spirit of St. Louis." She chuckled as Charlie lowered the glasses. "I'm glad I found you again. I'm sorry I left the stadium so fast. I have my reasons. I'm sorry. You seemed a little nervous when I called out your name before. You running from something?" She did not answer, and he peeked into the binoculars again. "What are all those red containers?" "Gas cans. As I said, it was a very tricky maneuver to take off with all that weight, but he needed the fuel." "I love things like this, the excitement, the daring," replied Charlie. He could almost feel the tension building, almost as good as being at the ballpark. "Well, it depends whether the Yanks are winning." Then she held his arm, her body tensing as she looked across the field. God, what a moment in time. If he makes it. Through the lenses, a lean young man with a huge crop of auburn hair traipsed around in army pants and a sweater. She nudged against Charlie and pointed. "That's him! Charlie, you have no idea what it's like to view this. No idea. The key is the telephone wires. He has to clear the telephone wires. Most people of this era still have no grand vision as to what this flight means to the world. Everything will change now. They only see their heroes right now. This era? The 20s, of course. How can he clear those wires with all that fuel and the wind coming in? Asked Charlie. No, he'll have the tailwind 5 miles an hour when he takes off. He snapped his fingers. Now I know. You're from the National Weather Service. That's why you carry the case. Nice try. I'll figure it out. Oh, you will you? He studied Lindbergh and tried to imagine himself in the same position. If he really doesn't make it, people will go crazy. A hint of sadness swept your azure eyes. This flight will make him famous at such a cost, Fame. They wouldn't let up on him. This society will end up destroying its heroes. Heroes are so necessary, Charlie. How do you know all this? I apologize. It isn't my mission to be talking about things past. It might make some radical time change. Radical time change? You never know how a changed event will play out. Most things you change on the timeline come to a dead end, but you do risk affecting more than you bargained for. Okay, I'll buy that. She sounded as if she'd just got out of the loony bin. He raised the binoculars again. After checking the runway, Lindbergh went over to the windsock, and seconds later he stripped into his flying suit. Charlie sensed the exhilarating anxiety as Lindbergh climbed up and into the plane. How would he pilot the small craft down the rain-soaked runway and clear the wires and woods at the far end? A gaggle of men moved toward the propeller and pulled it down. The motor sputtered but finally caught. A buzz reverberated across the misty morning, but the engine sounded weak. He's just letting it idle. You'll hear him tune it up in a second, said Jamelle, looking ahead. I know. You're a reporter. Nope. I give up. She clutched his shoulder. Mulligan and Bodecker. Sounds like a slick law firm. They're pushing the wings, Charlie. 7:52 a.m., May 20th, 1927. God, what a brave man. The small silver plane, with the single occupant inside and tires skipping in the mud, moved awkwardly down the field. The nose pointed ahead and the wings dipped a few times as the plane hit uneven ground. Oh, horse feathers. He's not going to make it up, said Charlie. He'll make it. Charlie covered his eyes but peeked through his fingers. All that gasoline? He's moving along, but he's not even in the air, Jamelle. It's okay, Charlie. Tomorrow night he'll be in Paris. Lindbergh and his tiny craft raced toward the ravine at the end of the runway. The Spirit of St. Louis would tumble into the ravine at high speed if he did not get that plane up in a few seconds. Come on, come on! The plane catapulted into the air, and Charlie jumped up and down as if he were at the ballpark. See, said Jamelle. He did it! He did it! The plane bounced off the ground just before the ravine and then back into the air. He didn't do it. Charlie grabbed her as Lindbergh hit the field again. She spoke softly. Just a little more. Just a little more. He hugged her again as the Spirit of St. Louis lifted into the air above a group of onlookers and a tractor beyond. Once he cleared the ravine, Lindbergh soared skyward. Charlie thrust his arms into the air. Yes! The tiny plane, engine pushed to the limit, wafted upward from the crowd and missed the telephone wires by only 15 or 20 feet. Jamelle had her arms clasped around Charlie. What a man! Why, thank you. She grinned and rustled her hand over his shoulders. He lingered only inches from her bronzed, freckled face and soft, wavy hair. The urge to kiss her became too much. He puckered up, but she turned toward the far end of the field. Lindbergh traced the undulating terrain beyond the field and simply disappeared into the May mist. Getting off the ground proved miraculous, but crossing the Atlantic Ocean seemed laughable. Charlie soon centered on Jamelle and her bizarre reflections about the flight. He held her arm as they stood on the grass. So where are you from, and what's this mission you talked about? I live in the city. Oh, we all have our missions. Where's your car? I'll walk you back. Well, I don't have a car. Well, you know, Charlie, there's something very likable about you. Charlie smiled and quickly lit a cigarette. I have one of those faces, and I have a car. Besides, I think you're the bee's knees. I beg your pardon. I think you're wonderful is what I'm saying. She smiled and turned her head upward for a second. You're coming back to New York with me. She hesitated. Oh, all right. In the car, Jamelle held the leather case in her lap and continued talking about Lindbergh, but once on the open road, she expanded her dissertation to include current events. Charlie found it odd how she spoke as if she were a historian or had some prescient knowledge. Charlie, this is a golden age. Golden age? Yes, everything is starting to happen technologically on Earth. Henry Ford is producing gasoline-powered cars by the thousands. Edison is still alive, but it wasn't that long ago before he brought electricity into practical application. But no one ever talks about Tesla. To be in a period where Albert Einstein... I'd like to go out with you again. Jamelle's lackadaisical response had him wondering whether she had really agreed. That would be fun. Think of it. Radio waves just being localized or broadcast, as they say. Video and the internet are years away. Excuse me, Jamelle, but I don't know what the hell you're talking about. I know. She smiled. Mystified, he looked at his watch as he drove into the city. Francine would be livid if he missed the luncheon appointment. But Francine would have to wait. Jamelle asked him about his job, and Charlie talked about his position at the tower and told her everything except his engagement to Francine. Well, I'm set for life. Guaranteed job, moving right up the ladder, money, stocks. I have so many stocks and so much property. See, the old man, E.B., he liked me right away. I'm set, Jamelle. Set for life. She squeezed his wrist, and her crisp blue eyes were serious. I wouldn't call that being set for life, Charlie. Forget about planning everything out. Take the moment, like we just did at Lindy's flight. It's the most valuable asset you have. Lindy's flight? That's what they'll call him, Lucky Lindy. I guess he'll have to be lucky if he makes it. He will. Jamelle, where exactly do you live? Oh, you can drop me at Columbus Circle near Central Park. Okay. He gazed down at the leather case as he turned the wheel and shifted. That case and her bold and varied references had him baffled, and he noticed how she would peer out the window as if she had never been to the city. A few minutes later, he rounded Columbus Circle. While we're at the Circle, let me bring you to your place. You can drop me right here, under that sign with the woman's face smiling inside the tire. You live under the Kelly Tire sign? Something distracted her as he looped around the circle. You said you have lots of stocks. Oh, I'm loaded with stocks. Bought them all on cheap margin. Dump whatever stocks you have, Charlie. Do yourself a favor. This is the 1920s, for goodness sakes. He pulled off the road, but he'd reached his limit with her private knowledge and intimations. Do you work on Wall Street? Who are you? And what's in that case? Oh, I'm from the future. She said it so casually. Charlie stared at her, and she smiled. Really? Right. He took out his Luckies again and lit a cigarette. Tobacco, the scourge of the 20th century. He raised his brows as he inhaled. The leather case beeped as it had in the ballpark. She pulled at the case and unzipped an odd, attaching beige fabric with a crackling rip. Charlie leaned over. Inside, a magenta screen glowed brightly. He alternated glances between Jamelle and the box. Tell me this is some kind of joke. No joke. This is Elf. Elf? Me, Charlie. A voice spoke from inside the box.
Good afternoon, Charlie.
What's the gag? That's a radio, powered by a battery. Very clever. She grinned at Charlie's consternation. Elf, tell him you're real.
I'll have you know that I am a consciousness exceeding all of your 20th century libraries.
I've been working too hard. Pressures, too many pressures. Listen, how can a box be talking to me? Someone blew a horn and he steered the 62 under the billboard sign. Because I'm on a mission back here, Charlie. A critical mission affecting all of the future.
Getting involved with this gentleman is open to debate.
Hey, what am I saying? He hit himself in the forehead. I'm arguing with a box.
My apologies, Charlie. I was more questioning Jamelle's judgment.
Is he a robot? He took another drag on the cigarette and pitched it out the window as a bright yellow message covered the screen. Robot is an antiquated term. Jamelle held his wrist, but Charlie still stared at the screen. Why don't we meet at the ballpark again? When's the next game? Yanks play Philly again on Tuesday. I think you better tell me what's going on here, Jamelle. I will, but not now. Give me your number. I can't take the chance of having a phone. I could be tracked if I have a phone. Why are there people after you? Jamelle nodded. Well, there could be. It's just a matter of time.
We have to be extremely careful. You can't mention this to anyone, Charlie.
Charlie quickly scribbled his phone number on a crumpled envelope as she opened the door and bopped around to his window. He handed the scrap through the open window. My number. She leaned forward and whispered, I believe, as they do say, Charlie, I have your number. Then she pulled back and walked whimsically along the circle. When she reached the Central Park entrance, she turned and gave him the turnstile wave. But Charlie, so smitten by her and by what she had said, shut off the car and yanked out the keys. He fumbled with the door handle, and then he raced after her. This time she would not get away.